I said no to my stepdaughter borrowing my wedding jewelry. My husband accused me of sabotage and playing favorites. Hi there. I'm a 43-year-old woman, and 3 years ago, I married my husband Hank, who's 46 now. This isn't my first marriage. My first husband passed away about 12 years ago. He was a truly wonderful man and also happened to be my childhood sweetheart. We started dating way back in middle school, long before we even understood what being in a relationship really meant. But it just felt right from the start. Eventually, marriage became the natural next step. It was the one thing we both knew we wanted. He was my soulmate, no question about it. That man will always be my first love, and nothing in this world could ever change that. Together, we had a daughter named Annie. She's 24 now, and she's been my rock through everything. When my husband got sick, Annie was only 8 years old. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, and despite putting up a long, difficult fight, he passed away. As heartbreaking as it was to lose him so early, there was also a strange kind of relief in knowing he wasn't in pain anymore. Watching someone you love suffer like that, it's unbearable. Letting him go was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but at the same time, I was thankful his suffering had finally come to an end. I still miss him from time to time, of course, but I feel like life has been generous in other ways. I really can't complain. I've come to believe that somehow, life always finds a way forward. After his death, it was just Annie and me, leaning on each other to get through the worst of it. We grieved together, healed together, and having her with me brought more comfort than anything else ever could. In a lot of ways, she reminds me so much of her father, and maybe that's why I always felt like a part of him never really left. I'm already tearing up just talking about this, so let me shift gears a bit before I get too emotional. Now, about Hank, my current husband. We actually met a few years ago at a friend's party. He was the one who walked up and started a conversation, and from that very first chat, we clicked. We ended up talking the entire evening, and it felt like we'd known each other for years. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and kept in touch. Soon after, we were texting regularly, and he was definitely laying on the charm. Within a couple of weeks, he asked me out, and I said yes. I had dated a few men after losing my husband, but honestly, my heart was never in it. I mostly agreed to go out because my family kept urging me to give love another chance. Annie had grown up and moved out by then, starting her own independent life, and everyone seemed to think I shouldn't be alone anymore. I didn't mind Annie moving on with her life. She deserved to live it to the fullest, but I also didn't have a problem with being on my own. My family meant well, I know that, which is probably why they kept setting me up with different guys. But the truth is, I never connected with any of them the way I had with my late husband. He had set the bar incredibly high. So while I did go on a few dates and even had a couple of short-term flings, nothing ever stuck. But with Hank, things felt different right away. From our first date, he was very upfront. He told me he wasn't looking for anything casual. We were both in our 40s, both had previous marriages and grown kids, and both were ready to start a new chapter. My husband had passed away, and in Hank's case, his ex-wife had cheated on him and left when their daughter, Fran, was just 13. He also had a younger son, and the divorce had been incredibly hard on the entire family. After that, Hank had sworn off serious relationships for a long time. His focus was completely on his kids, especially since their mother gave up her parental rights and disappeared from their lives. He had to step up and be both parents, and he did. Now that his children were grown, he felt like he could finally think about himself and maybe find a partner again. I really admired how open and honest he was about all of this. It's what drew me to him, I think. He was genuine, laid back, had a great sense of humor, and although he was very different from my first husband, I liked him right away. For the first time since becoming a widow, I actually felt a real connection with a man. Before long, I'd completely fallen for him. Within a year, he moved in with me, and after dating for around 2 years, we got married 3 years ago now. It's been mostly smooth sailing ever since. He's a good man, and I love him. One of the things I deeply respect about Hank is how he's always acknowledged that I had a life and a love before him. He never made me feel weird or guilty for still cherishing my late husband's memory. In fact, he would often ask about him and listen kindly when I shared stories. That meant a lot to me, especially since a few men I dated in the past made me feel uncomfortable whenever I brought up my late husband. Hank never did that. He was supportive, kind, and never insecure about it. That's one of the things that made me see him as a truly stand-up guy. I've been happy with him, at least until recently. Something happened not too long ago that really shook things up between us, and ever since then, it's been tense. We haven't even spoken since our last argument. It got that bad. Things have never been this strained between us before, and I honestly don't know what to do. It all started a few weeks back when Fran, his daughter, announced that she was engaged. I was thrilled for her, really. She and her boyfriend had been together for a long time, since high school, I think, and I thought it was sweet. I even told them it reminded me of my own story, and I gave them a heartfelt congratulations along with some lovely gifts at their engagement party. Now, Fran and I have always had a polite, respectful relationship, but we're not what you'd call close. I met her when she was already an adult, so we never had that traditional stepmom-stepdaughter bond. We're not girlfriends, partly because of the age gap, but also because Fran's a pretty private person. She's never really opened up to me. She's always been nice, sure, but we've just never clicked in a deep or personal way. And honestly, I've never held that against her. Some people are just naturally reserved, it takes them time to open up, and that's okay with me. I used to hold out hope that, with time, Fran might come to see me as part of her family. For a while, I thought maybe we'd grow closer eventually. But lately, that hope has been fading, and to be honest, after everything that's been going on, I'm not so sure it'll ever happen. Just a couple of days after the engagement party, Fran called and asked if I was going to be home that weekend. I said yes, but mentioned that Hank would be out with some of his friends. Usually, when she visits, it's always to see her dad. That's just how it's been. So I figured she'd come by another time. But to my surprise, she told me she was actually hoping to talk to me, not her father. That caught me off guard. In all the times we'd been in the same room without Hank, it was always, well, awkward. She never really initiated any conversation, and even when I tried to make small talk, things didn't go anywhere. It was like pulling teeth. So when she said she wanted to speak with me one-on-one, I immediately felt like something was off. Still, I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. I figured maybe she was finally trying to build some kind of relationship with me, and I didn't want to shut that down. Even though Fran and I have never been close, I've always liked her. She's got a good head on her shoulders, and I genuinely would have loved to get to know her better. So I invited her over. The second she walked through the door, something felt different. She was acting completely unlike her usual self. For one thing, she hugged me. That might not sound like a big deal, but trust me, Fran isn't the hugging type. She barely even hugs Hank, and he's her dad. So yeah, that threw me off a little. But I didn't say anything. I just went along with it. We sat down on the couch and started chatting. At first, it was small talk, nothing too deep. But then she started asking me all kinds of questions about my life, my marriage to my late husband, and even about our wedding. She seemed curious, almost eager to know more, and I won't lie, it felt like we were finally bonding a little. I honestly thought we were making progress. It felt like the start of something good. Then, after about an hour of chatting, she finally got to the real reason she was there. She told me she wanted to ask me for something. I said sure, thinking it was going to be something simple, like a recommendation or help with planning the wedding. But what came out of her mouth completely caught me off guard. Fran asked if she could wear my wedding jewelry on her big day. Now, under different circumstances, maybe I would have considered it. But this particular jewelry, it's not just fancy stones to me. It's deeply personal. Those pieces carry memories of my first husband and the life we shared. And more importantly, I've always dreamed of passing them down to my daughter, Annie. I wanted her to be the first to wear them after me, whether it's at her wedding or some other special event. That's always been my hope. And in my heart, I couldn't let anyone else wear them first. So I had to tell Fran no. I tried to say it as gently and kindly as I could, but let's be real, there's no easy way to turn someone down when they've clearly been building up the courage to ask. And from the look on her face, I could tell she hadn't expected me to say no. She looked so disappointed. She said she'd been wanting to ask me for a while, ever since I told her at the engagement party that she and her fiancé reminded me of myself and my late husband. She said she'd seen some of our wedding photos around the house and had fallen in love with the jewelry I wore in them. Apparently, my comment at the party is what gave her the idea in the first place. Her words were sweet, and honestly, for a moment, I almost gave in. But then I thought of Annie. Even though I knew Annie probably wouldn't mind, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I've been waiting so long to see my daughter wear those pieces, and it just wouldn't feel right seeing Fran wear them first. It had nothing to do with how I feel about Fran, I still like her, but those pieces are a part of my heart, and I couldn't let them go like that. After that, the conversation kind of died out. She didn't say much, and eventually she left. I could tell she was hurt and disappointed, and I honestly felt awful about it. I still feel guilty, which is probably why I'm even writing this all out now. But the truth is, I love my daughter more. That doesn't mean I dislike Fran, it just means Annie comes first in situations like this. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What I didn't expect, though, was the way everything blew up afterward. I figured that was the end of it. I didn't think much more about the conversation with Fran after she left. But apparently, she went straight to Hank and told him everything. And he decided to get involved. A few hours later, Hank came home, and the second he walked in, he confronted me about it. He brought up the whole conversation I'd had with Fran and asked me why I said no. I was honest. I told him that I had always wanted Annie to be the first to wear that jewelry, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. But Hank pushed back. He said Annie was still young and might not even get married for years. I told him it wasn't about whether Annie had a wedding anytime soon. She could wear it for any occasion she felt was special. It didn't have to be a wedding. But whatever it was, I wanted her to be the first. That was something I wasn't willing to budge on. I could tell by the way Hank came at me that he was ready to turn this into a fight. And sure enough, that's exactly where things went. At first, he tried to reason with me. He said he'd make sure the jewelry was well taken care of and promised that if anything happened, he'd replace it or compensate me in some way. But I told him flat out this wasn't about money or damage. It was about meaning. That jewelry holds sentimental value for me, and I've been saving it for Annie. That's all there is to it. Then he got personal. He started throwing accusations around, saying I was being selfish and that he didn't expect this kind of behavior from me. Hank told me he couldn't believe I treat his daughter that way. He said he'd never drawn lines between Annie and Fran, so he didn't expect me to either, that I was being unfair. But to me, that argument didn't even make sense. By the time Hank and I got together, both our girls were already adults. It's not like we were co-parenting toddlers or had any real say in raising them anymore. That ship had sailed. I told him he was being unreasonable, and I didn't want to keep arguing about it. But that's when he completely lost it. He raised his voice and started yelling, accusing me of trying to sabotage Fran's wedding out of spite, claiming that I never liked her and everyone could see it. I was floored. I had no idea where that even came from. The idea that I would try to ruin her wedding just because I didn't like her? That stung. It painted me as some petty, jealous villain, and that's just not who I am. I told Hank, as calmly as I could, that this had nothing to do with Fran as a person. It was about me, and it was about Annie. The only reason I said no was because I'd always dreamed of seeing my daughter wear that jewelry first. That's it. I had no plans to ruin anyone's big day, and I sure wasn't playing favorites to be cruel. I even reminded him that I've always tried to be kind to Fran. I genuinely like her. But let's be honest, it's always been one-sided. I was the one trying to build a connection, trying to talk to her, make her feel welcome. But she never gave me much to work with. If someone doesn't want to engage, there's only so much you can do. Still, I thought maybe that day, the day she came to visit, was a turning point. I figured she was finally opening up, and I was honestly excited about that. But finding out she just came for the jewelry? That made the whole thing feel transactional, like she was buttering me up just to get a yes. It kind of broke my heart. I tried explaining that to Hank, but he wouldn't hear a word of it. Even though I wasn't blaming Fran or talking badly about her, he took it that way. It felt like, in his eyes, someone had to be the bad guy, and somehow, that someone was me. And you know what? I get where Fran was coming from. She liked the jewelry, thought it would make her feel special on her big day, and maybe it reminded her of something sentimental. I can't fault her for that. I was even a little flattered she liked it so much. But just because she asked nicely doesn't mean I'm obligated to say yes. My reasons were personal and deeply emotional. This shouldn't have been a war. Nobody did anything wrong here, we just had different feelings. But Hank made it into a whole thing. He told me flat out that I had two choices, either lend the jewelry to Fran or live with the guilt of knowing I hurt our family over something he called a petty notion. He said it like me wanting Annie to wear my jewelry first somehow cheapened everything. And then he walked away. We haven't spoken since that argument. Not a word. And that silence, it's deafening. Hank and I, like any couple, have had our disagreements over the years, but never anything like this. Usually, our arguments were over small things, the kind you forget the next day. But this? This feels like a wall between us. What really hurts is how he shut down. He won't even look at me. He won't talk to me. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out how we even got here. I haven't talked to Fran about any of it either, and frankly, I doubt she could change his mind. The day we fought, he was already too far gone, too angry to listen. It's hard not to feel like something shifted between us that night. Hank had always been respectful about my past. He knew I had been married before, that I had Annie. And he always said he understood that my first family meant the world to me. But after this blow-up, I can't help but feel like he's holding that against me now, as if I'm being punished for putting my daughter first. But of course I'd prioritize Annie. That doesn't mean I love Hank or Fran any less, it just means Annie is my child, my flesh and blood, someone I raised and watched grow up. Fran wasn't a part of my life until much later, so no, I don't feel the same kind of closeness. Saying no to her didn't break my heart the way it would have if I were saying no to Annie. I just want Hank to understand that this isn't about choosing sides or showing favoritism. It's about something personal and meaningful to me, something I didn't think would turn into a full-blown war in my marriage. But I don't know how to explain it to him without setting off another fight, and honestly, I don't think I have the energy for another argument. We've been avoiding each other for days now, and I don't even know what to say anymore. I did talk to Annie about it, and she told me she wouldn't have minded if someone else wore the jewelry first. But this isn't about her, it's about what that jewelry represents to me. It's the principle of the thing. And with how Hank's been treating me since our fight, I can't help but feel like the bad guy. I keep wondering if I was wrong all along. Maybe I am being petty. Maybe I overreacted. But I also know how much that jewelry means to me, and saying no felt completely reasonable at the time. So, am I the jerk for telling my stepdaughter no when she asked to borrow my wedding jewelry just because I wanted my own daughter to be the first to wear it? Update 1. Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Seriously. To everyone who left a comment, whether it was in agreement or not, I appreciate it. It meant a lot to see people actually engaging with my story, and reading your responses gave me a lot to think about. Now, back to what's been happening. It's been about a week and a half since that argument, and as I said, Hank and I hadn't spoken a word to each other in all that time. It was awful. The tension, the silence, it was eating me up inside. I wasn't handling it well at all. 2 days ago, I finally hit my breaking point. I realized that this cold war between us wasn't helping anyone. The fight wasn't going to fix itself, and the longer we ignored it, the worse it was getting. We weren't just hurt, we were letting our pride turn this into some kind of ego battle. And I couldn't keep living like that. So I made the decision to talk to him. I knew we couldn't go on like that, silent and bitter. If we didn't find some middle ground, this fight was going to pull us further apart until we couldn't fix it. So, a few days ago, I sat Hank down. I told him everything that had been weighing heavy on me. I admitted that I was scared this fight might break us, and losing him was the last thing I ever wanted. As soon as I said that, I saw something shift in him. He softened. The anger, the tension, it faded a little. We ended up hugging right there, and honestly, it felt like we were both holding our breath for days and finally let it out. It was obvious we missed each other, and neither of us wanted to keep fighting. After the hug, he told me he'd done some thinking. He realized that both he and Fran had been acting a little entitled, expecting me to just hand over something that meant so much to me. He admitted that it wasn't right of him to put me in a position where I had to choose between my daughter and his, especially when this wasn't about favoritism, but about sentiment. He said he was sorry. And I accepted his apology. I also admitted that maybe I hadn't handled it perfectly either. I was so firm in my decision, I didn't take the time to explain where I was coming from in a calm way. I told him that the wedding jewelry was chosen with my late husband in mind, that I'd picked it because I knew he would love it, and it carried a deep emotional connection for me. That jewelry meant something. And if someone was going to wear it after me, it had to be Annie. No one else. But I also said I wasn't trying to shut Fran out. So I offered a solution. I told Hank I'd have an identical set made just for Fran. A custom piece, same design, same style. It could be my wedding gift to her. He seemed relieved and said that sounded fair. We both apologized again, and it finally felt like we were on the same page. Update 2. So, 2 days after I posted here, things took another unexpected turn. Like I said, Hank and I had agreed that I'd have a matching set of wedding jewelry custom made for Fran. That would be my gift to her, something heartfelt, and honestly, much more expensive than just letting her borrow mine. I really thought she'd be happy. Instead, she lost it. She came over that evening. Hank had invited her so we could all talk and clear the air. I calmly explained to her that I couldn't part with my original jewelry because of the emotional meaning it held, but that I was more than willing to create something identical for her. I even told her I was still in touch with the designer who originally made it, and she'd be more than happy to recreate it. I truly thought Fran would appreciate that. But instead of being grateful, she got sulky. She said that wasn't what she wanted. That she didn't want a copy, she wanted my jewelry. She went on about how she liked the rustic, traditional feel of old heirloom pieces, and a replica just wouldn't feel the same. I told her the new set would look exactly the same, but she kept making faces and acting like I was insulting her. Then, just like during our earlier fight, she accused me of playing favorites. Said I was treating her unfairly. And right then, it clicked. That's where Hank had gotten that idea in the first place. Fran. She'd been the one whispering all those things in his ear, telling him I didn't like her, that I was playing sides. I never accused her of it out loud, But in that moment, I knew. Hank hadn't suddenly decided to turn this into a daughter versus daughter thing on his own. Fran had planted the seed. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to make it worse by calling her out. But in my head, I was just stunned. All this over a piece of jewelry? Manipulating your dad over something like that? It seemed obsessive. Meanwhile, Fran didn't hold back. She let me have it. She stood up, started yelling, said she knew I'd never liked her. That I'd always been cold and distant. Yet another thing she must have said to Hank earlier. And honestly, I don't even blame him anymore. He's a pretty straightforward guy, not the kind to catch on to manipulation right away. But by then, I think he finally saw it. He didn't say much during her outburst, he just sat there, cold and quiet. When Fran turned on him and accused him of letting me manipulate him, he didn't even respond. That silence said it all. Fran kept yelling, saying I was jealous of her because she was getting married and Annie wasn't. That I was gatekeeping the one thing she wanted because Annie and I couldn't handle someone else being in the spotlight. She even said she was clearly superior to Annie and that we were ganging up on her out of insecurity. It was nasty. And Hank? He didn't defend her this time. I think he'd finally realized just how far she was willing to go to get her way. She stormed out crying, and honestly, that's on her. I offered a perfectly kind, reasonable solution. She could have had something just as beautiful, something made just for her. But she turned it into a mess. Hank and I made peace. That matters. We tried to fix things with Fran, but it didn't go the way we hoped. And sometimes, things just don't. Some situations are beyond our control, and Fran had expectations she never made the effort to earn. She wanted something from someone she never even tried to build a relationship with. Update 3: It's been about a week since Fran's meltdown, and we haven't heard a word from her. Not even Hank. That's honestly the most surprising part, she's not even speaking to her father. They've always been close, so for her to go radio silent? It must have stung him. I can see he's hurt, even if he doesn't say it outright. But we did talk, and he admitted that most of the things he'd said during our argument about favoritism, about me being unfair, were things Fran had been feeding him. He said he was just upset because she was upset, and that clouded his judgment. He apologized again for how it all played out. Now, he says he's not going to reach out to her until she owns up and apologizes for causing so much drama over something that didn't have to be a big deal. Whether or not that apology ever comes, we don't know. Oddly enough, Fran's brother is siding with us on this. He thinks she blew things way out of proportion. So at this point, if Fran wants anyone from her family at her wedding, she's going to have to take the first step and make things right. As for me, I already know I won't be invited. And honestly, I'm okay with that.